So here's the thing that happened. Even as jaded as I am, I'm having trouble believing it, let alone understanding it. Back in March of 2018, 25-year-old Jonathan Rivera had to appear at the Hartford, Connecticut Superior Court to answer charges of first-degree larceny and tampering with a motor vehicle, stemming from an incident in which he stole a car in February of that same year. Now, to his credit, Mr. Rivera did appear when he was supposed to, so I applaud him for that. While Mr. Rivera was in court, the parking authority was cruising around the courthouse, scanning the license plates of the vehicles parked outside, which is a fairly common thing. Now, I'm willing to bet they don't often find much, if anything, on most days when court is in session. That day, however, they did. What they found was a 2014 white Subaru Legacy that had been reported stolen from nearby Newington. The parking authority notified the police, who then started watching the car, hoping to find the driver. Who that driver wound up being wasn't exactly a surprise to them. And yes, it was exactly who you thought it was. Rivera. I am not kidding. He was quite naturally arrested and charged with second-degree larceny and taking a motor vehicle without the owner's permission. This smooth brain actually stole a car to go to court for stealing a car. I'll give you a second to let that sink in. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how one would race straight to the lead of the chosen few, the one race you do not want to win. In April of 2022, Randy Cantwell embarked on a quest in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Was it a noble quest, like saving a damsel in distress? Or maybe reuniting a lost child with their parents? Perhaps he was trying to save a bag of puppies or kittens that someone tossed in a random body of water. Not exactly. Randy Cantwell's quest this day was to acquire an Audi, as if Audis were the holy grail of automobiles. Don't get me wrong. The problem with Mr. Cantwell's quest wasn't that he was on the quest itself, it was how he went about trying to accomplish his self-appointed task. To further that task, Randy went to a car dealership in South Tulsa, expressing an interest in a particular car on the lot. Countless people do the same every day, all around the world. So far, so good. One of the salespeople grabbed the keys, then took Randy to see the vehicle and go over its quirks and features, as Doug DeMuro likes to say. It was expressed to Mr. Cantwell, however, that the vehicle was not prepared for any kind of a test drive. And that's when the quest went awry. Mr. Cantwell then became Marshal Cantwell, claiming that the car in question was stolen and he was taking it for evidence. That's right, Randy said he was a federal marshal. Suspecting that wasn't true, several employees of the dealership blocked the car from leaving, forcing Cantwell to abandon the attempt and walk away. Police were called. Police arrived. Police found Mr. Cantwell and took him into custody. When asked for his identification, all Randy had with him was his driver's license. He was then questioned about his claim to be a federal marshal, and this smooth brain declared that former President Trump made him one when he declared martial law. And you have no idea how much I wish I was making that part up. I do admit to being somewhat amused by Mr. Cantwell's very novel attempt at car theft. It was certainly original, but with the end result of being charged with impersonating a law enforcement officer, it automatically places you among the chosen few. On May 30th, 2023, 25-year-old David Joseph D'Alessandro went to the Quick Stop in Sharon, South Carolina. True, this was not unusual. Hundreds, if not thousands of people visit Quick Stops every day. Perhaps he was looking for a late-night snack. Maybe he just wanted to fill up his gas tank, or even a quick stop in the restroom. It might have been that he just wanted to get some quick cash on his way home from work. Well, he was looking to grab some quick cash, but it definitely wasn't from the ATM. No, he was looking to rob the place. Witnesses recall a person entering the store wearing a hooded sweatshirt, a mask, and a wig. This person displayed the grip of what looked to be a pistol tucked into the waistband of his pants and demanded the money from the register. The clerk, understandably scared, handed over around $300. D'Alessandro then made his getaway, but apparently he didn't get too far, as the police found him in the parking lot of a nearby Dollar General. He was quickly disarmed and arrested. Now, I say disarmed, but the weapon used in the robbery wasn't a real firearm, nor was it one of the myriad of airsoft or other air-powered weapons that can, and have, passed as legitimate weapons. No, this weapon was much simpler, not to mention sillier, and far less believable as a genuine firearm. If he had needed to actually brandish it, he likely would have been laughed out of the store, and rightfully so. I am absolutely, positively, 100% not making this up. He used the light gun from the old Nintendo video game, Duck Hunt. He just spray painted the thing black. You cannot make this stuff up. D'Alessandro was charged with armed robbery with a deadly weapon, petty larceny under $2,000, and wearing masks and the like during the commission of a crime. I'm absolutely not advocating to commit crimes, but if you decide to use a fake weapon to do so, the least you could do is use one that looks real. You know what? Scratch that. Keep being smooth brains about it, just so I never run out of stories for the chosen few. Remember this smooth brain? This is Wendy Ween, and her main claim to fame is that she tried to use an obviously satirical website called rentahitman.com to hire someone to permanently end her ex-husband's life. Long story short, she was arrested, pled guilty, and is now spending at least 9 years in prison. I did a video about her a short while ago. At the end of that video, I mentioned that I had another story about rentahitman.com in the works. A story that's arguably even worse than the Wendy Ween story. This is that story. Say hello to Josiah Ernesto Garcia. He's a 21-year-old member of Tennessee's Air National Guard. In February of 2023, he was looking for a job, and with a child on the way, the need was becoming more pressing day after day. Unfortunately, Mr. Garcia didn't stop with looking for a regular job. You know, something he could do on the correct side of the law. No, he wanted excitement, danger, maybe a sense of mystery. A job in which he could leverage his particular set of skills. A job that allowed him to utilize his military training. I mean, he could have gone the police officer route, or maybe the security guard path, something, anything other than the road he tried to travel. What Josiah did instead was send an email with his resume to rentahitman.com. He described himself as an expert marksman with prior military service. He was actually inquiring about a position as a hitman. He wanted to be known as Reaper, which was a nickname he said, and I quote, earned from military experience and marksmanship, end quote. Garcia was, according to a follow-up email referencing his resume, looking for a job that pays well related to my military experience, shooting and killing the marked target, so I can support my kid on the way. The email also stated, what can I say? I enjoy doing what I do, so if I can find a job similar to it, such as this one, put me in, coach. Not kidding, he actually put that in an email. The administrator of rentahitman.com has said that they believe Garcia was stating his skill set matched the needs of a company that hires employees to commit murder. After the administrator asked Garcia for a headshot and his ID to accompany the resume, Garcia waited, somewhat impatiently, as it turned out, because the airman sent multiple follow-up emails, apparently eager to start working as soon as possible. Little did Garcia know, however, that his information had already been forwarded to the FBI, which then directed the administrator to send a reply, which stated, Josiah, a field coordinator will be in touch in the near future. You will receive a message when they are ready. Timing is based on client needs. A field coordinator did, in fact, contact Garcia in April, or at least Garcia believed it was a field coordinator. In reality, it was an undercover FBI agent who asked Josiah why he wanted to be a hitman. Garcia replied that he wanted to do something similar to what he was already doing, but he wanted a flexible schedule, as he planned on attending college the next year. Garcia met with the undercover agent in person shortly thereafter, a meeting in which the agent expressed to Garcia multiple times that he did not have to do this. Garcia responded that he was looking into this for some time, apparently referring to becoming a hitman, and was looking for a way to make good money. After agreeing to eliminate a fictitious target for $5,000 and provided a down payment of $2,500, Josiah Ernesto Garcia was arrested by the FBI and charged with the use of interstate facilities in the commission of a murder for hire, which could get the soon-to-be former airman up to 10 years in a federal prison. Look, I applaud him for wanting to take care of his family. I mean, too many people try to escape that responsibility in today's world. I'd encourage any parent to do whatever they can to support their family, but don't be a smooth brain about it. In other words, do yourself a favor and refrain from dipping across that line into illegality. Mr. Garcia didn't just dip across that line, he straight up long jumped it, landing well past the point from which he could easily return and earning himself a spot among the chosen few. I've heard stories about people faking their own deaths before. It's not a new phenomenon. Usually, it's for what turns out to be relatively harmless reasons, like getting out of an extremely toxic relationship, or an abusive one, or abandoning your family, which is a very poor choice, but not exactly illegal. Most of the time, the ones we hear about are people attempting some type of insurance fraud, or criminals faking their own deaths to escape accountability for their crimes. They usually get caught, sometimes quickly. Sometimes it could take years or even decades. The overwhelming majority of the latter category generally tend to fake their deaths before or during their trials. This isn't that kind of story, though. I've looked everywhere I can think of to find a picture of the man in question, but I don't think there's any publicly available, so I've had zero luck in that department. That said, in 2019, 25-year-old Robert Berger of Huntington, New York, pled guilty to possession of a stolen vehicle and attempted grand larceny of a truck, both felonies. He was scheduled to be sentenced in October of that year and was expected to get about a year of prison time. Then his lawyer's office delivered a notice to the prosecutor that Berger died of suicide in September, along with a death certificate out of New Jersey. A very official-looking death certificate. Case closed. No need for further court proceedings, right? Not exactly. Upon closer inspection, the prosecutor noticed something wasn't quite right with the death certificate. The seal was there, the signature looked legitimate, the border, barcode, and filing number were all present, so what was the issue? Why wouldn't the nagging suspicion something was off go away? The death certificate was almost perfect, but for one small detail. The kind of detail nearly everyone overlooks when typing: a misspelled word. Look right here. Registry is spelled wrong. Just to be absolutely certain, the prosecutor called the Office of Vital Statistics and Registry of the New Jersey Department of Health to verify whether or not the death certificate was valid. And surprise, surprise, it was not. Meanwhile, Berger didn't exactly turn over a new leaf while he was dead. In November of 2019, the dead man was arrested in Delaware County, Pennsylvania for providing a false identity to law enforcement, among other charges, and was sentenced to a year for those charges. His perfidy was then discovered. He was extradited back to New York in early 2020 to face a charge of offering a false instrument for filing, which can garner up to 4 years in prison. Just another felony to go along with the felony charges to which he had already pled guilty. Unfortunately, I can't find any information on any sentences he may have received, but given the sheer number of felonies Berger committed, I hope they were all the maximum allowed and that they ran consecutively. How are you smart enough to forge an almost perfect death certificate, but not smart enough to use the spell checker on that forgery? Can you imagine getting caught, at least partly, by a spelling error? But it was that spelling error that put Robert Berger firmly in the chosen few. This one isn't just a chosen few video, because the subject of this story didn't conclude their criminal career after the events that are detailed within this video. You're going to want to stick around to the end to find out what happened. It's not pretty. On December 27th, 2018, a 26-year-old man carrying a plastic shopping bag walked up to a bicycle locked into a bike rack. That's not unusual, I do admit that. Perhaps he just made a quick trip to his local Walmart or some other local business, like countless people do every day. What was unusual, however, was the contents of that bag, a bolt cutter. This wasn't just an innocent nighttime shopper after all. The man immediately went to work trying to cut the chain, preventing him from just taking off with the bike. Unluckily for the prospective bike thief, however, a police officer, one Sergeant Matt Okerman, was close by, figured out what he was doing, and arrested him. Sergeant Okerman was soon joined by other officers during that arrest. Now, you might be wondering why and how so many officers were in the area. especially for something as relatively minor as stealing a bicycle. And no, it was not a run to the local donut shop. 26-year-old Adam Alexander Vale, who is a career criminal with a string of arrests dating back to 2014, mostly for drug offenses, decided to make the unbelievably smooth-brained decision to attempt to steal the bicycle from outside the Gladstone police station. And I am not kidding. The name is literally on the window that was in clear view as Vale walked over to the chained-up bike. There was no possible way he could have missed it. Even the most underachieving second grader could have read those words and been smart enough to just nope out of there. Vale was charged with theft, criminal mischief, and felon in possession of weapons, but the fact he tried this outside of a clearly marked police station made him part of the chosen few. And then he had to go beyond the chosen few in one of the worst ways possible. He was arrested in February of 2019 for failure to appear on the 2018 charges, and some others. But the saddest part of this story is that he was arrested once again in March of 2019. This time for DUI after he crashed a stolen car he was driving as he was fleeing the police that were not in pursuit. That wasn't even the worst part. A female passenger, 19-year-old Heaven Lee Matthews, was killed in the crash, resulting in a manslaughter charge. The good part of this story is that Vale seems to be finally taking responsibility for his actions, as he pled guilty to several charges, including the manslaughter, and received an 85-month sentence, a permanent revocation of his driving privileges, and will be required to pay at least $45,000 in restitution. Heaven's death could have been entirely prevented had Vale not been released on the failure to appear charges. I will never understand a court system that allows repeat offenders out on bail, especially if that bail is for charges for which the offender has already failed to appear. Our justice system needs a total overhaul, starting with the policies regarding bail for repeat offenders and those who deliberately fail to appear in court to face up to their misdeeds.